Hey guys, welcome back. So in the previous video, we have our Git repository all set up. We created our dev environment, we seeded it with some database credential information, and we went through we went through the first prompt and we told Codex where to find that prompt. Codex looked at it, created a backend and front end scaffolding for us. Mostly the backend is what we had worked on in the first video. We've got a schema.sql, which helps us to build our database and our tables. And we've got a seed.sql that then seeds that database with some test information. What we're going to do now is we're going to check out the second prompt. We're going to go through it real quick. I want to show you guys the structure of it, what's going to be in it, and we'll go from there. At this point in phase two, we're going to point Codex to the second prompt here. And what it's going to do is we're going to start developing a more robust API backend for our application. What we're not going to do is we're not going to introduce any authentication. We're going to have a hard-coded user that floats around in the background for testing. At this point, we're going to start organizing our backend into routes, controllers, and models. Models being database and schema related. When you have sort of like a user table, you've got different rows and columns in there, and that's how we want to maintain these data structures for the backend. Now, the routes, they'll exist somewhere in our application, typically a routes/API folder. And what I mean by that is when you go down to the server.js, these are your routes. Within them, you've got your URL route that gets appended to the end of your URL that hits our Express server here and then runs what's within these curly brackets to basically right now we're just sending this JSON information to the front end. But what we're going to do is we're going to extract the logic that's going to live within these curly braces because it can get rather large. We're going to extract that logic into what's called controllers that control the functionality within these routes. So at that point, we'll separate the routes and the controllers. So to give you an example here, we've got our different category routes where we can get categories. We're going to be able to create new categories with post, and we're going to be able to manage the deletion of the categories with our delete route here. We've got transactions, sort of the same paradigm, except for a put. A put is used to basically make an update to an already existing transaction in this case. And then we have some validation criteria here, as well as, after building the phase, it's going to tell us basically how to test it, right? So let's just jump right into it. I'm going to point Codex to the second prompt here and get that underway. If anything funky happens, I'll stop that process. I'll get the video rolling. We'll go over it. Hopefully you guys don't run into anything that I haven't ran into, and we'll just go from there. All right, so the second phase has been implemented by Codex here, and we'll check a few things out and start the testing process of these API routes. Now, what it did was it added the category and transition API routes. It separated the routes from the controllers. So let's check that out real quick. We go to the backend, go to our source folder here, and we have our controllers and our routes. So let's check out the routes. If you guys recall, the pattern here where we've got our app dot, in this case it's router dot get, and then our URL path, and then it performs this function right here. Originally we had saw that the route was holding this work within those curly brackets. Now we've pushed that sort of work out of the route section, so we have a nice clean route structure. We've pushed that out into our controllers. So we can find this one right here. We'll go to our category controllers, and this is where all the magic happens. And I'll just hit Control F and find that real quick. So that route that we saw, that example, it runs this function here. And what it does, it gets the categories, it queries the categories table based off of the user information and then returns that information to us on the front end. And then at that point on the front end would interpolate those data into the UI so that the users can see it, right? So there we've got our routes and our controllers. We've got a little setup that we can do so that we can just run a fresh database, fresh seed, and all that stuff. And we'll get the server up and running. And what it did here is it gave us some curl commands that we can run in the terminal to get back like this data here. So we'll open up a new terminal. We've copied that curl command. I'm gonna paste it here. And there we go. We get a category. It's based off of the user ID, the name of the category, and our timestamp, right? So this doesn't look too good. It kind of, I mean, the data structure looks good, right? It's kind of hard to read. It's not very pretty. We don't necessarily want to test our routes using curl commands in the terminal because as you can see, the syntax gets a little messy. You've got escape characters and all this other stuff and these flags, right? So what we really want to do is now we're going to go and we're going to get something like Postman set up so that way we've got a nice little interface and we can start querying these routes and testing them. So we'll jump into it. All right, so here we are at the Postman website. Go ahead and we'll click try a new Postman. It's going to take you to a registration form. Either, sign up with Google or your GitHub account. Either way, once you get the sign up thing done and you go through its process, it'll open up a new tab in your screen and we'll get started from there. All right, so once you've reached this point, you've already registered for Postman. You've got this open. It should have opened automatically. What we're going to want to do is we want to install Postman locally so that we can run our tests locally. We can't run our test here right now unless something is actually live hosted on the internet. So what we'll do is we'll come to the settings, we'll download the desktop app, and I'm in Windows, so I'll install it there. All right, so once that download is done, we'll click on it and we'll get the install process rolling. So at this point, go ahead and continue with the account that you originally got Postman registered with. And then once you have that done, go ahead and open Postman. That option should come up from the browser. We will allow, and there it is. All right, so once we've got Postman open, I'm just gonna, well, what I've done is I've brought in VS Code to the right here, so that way we can check out our routes and start testing some things. We've got our test collection. Let me just rename this to expenses, which is our app name, just, represents our app. And we'll create a few files here to house the different routes that we're going to test. We've got a category routes that we're going to test, and then we've got transaction routes that we're going to test as well. And we'll just bifurcate that into different folders. So we'll add a folder and we'll rename it. Call that categories, and we'll add another one. No, we'll add another folder and rename that to transactions. Okay, so let me remove this. Okay, so let's move these two into categories. That's the first thing we're going to test. So open that up. We've got a get route. I've already seeded it with the URL that we're going to use to hit. And you can see that it's already been successful. But let me show you how we constructed this. So on the server, we are listening on port 5000, right? We're listening on port 5000 on the server. So we're at http:///localhost port 5000, and API/categories is going to be the base URL for categories, and we can verify that by going into server here. Here we have our base URL, our base route for the categories API, as you can see. And then when we go to the category routes, that then further define the appended criteria for the route, such as here. We simply have basically just the forward slash that represents this right here. And we have an ID that represents this is a placeholder that we will then put like a number value in to query the database for a single set of data. So go ahead and copy and paste that, or create this route here for your get. We're just going to get data and we'll hit send. And here we have all of our categories from our categories table. Now we've got a post route. It's going to be the same URL. What we want to do is we want to send this as a body, this is the JSON that we're going to send as a body. So you come to body, make sure you're under raw and select it as JSON. And we create our little JSON object here, right? We call it test1 expense and we hit send. We're hitting this post route right here, obviously with that appended URL, which is nothing in this case. And it's going to hit the add category controller function that inserts that category into the database. And you can see here, it just returned to us a new category, the category that we just created. So if we run get data, we should be able to see that near the bottom here. And there it is, our test example. So there's one more I want to test, and that's the delete route. So we will create a new route, select that, rename that to delete. And the URL is going to be the same, except for we, at this point, will add the ID. And if you come here, you can get a category ID just from here. So we'll select the one we just created. So we'll go with 6. So we'll do /6. Make sure you've got this set to delete. That won't update there until you come over here and click save. So now we've got our delete route. Everything looks good. Category 6. We'll hit send. Should get some feedback. It deleted this category successfully. And this is the one we deleted. Now, if we come over here and we query our database again, we should not see this test category. And we don't. It's gone. So that's how you can test your API routes here in Postman. Now, go ahead and try this with the transaction route. If you can't get it, that's fine. It's a bit more complicated. There's some more going on there. We'll cover that here in a second. So try it out. All right, hopefully you had some success with trying the transaction routes yourself and setting them up here in Postman. What I've got right now is I've got a transaction category and I have added the 5 different routes that we have that represent our gets, our post, our put, and our delete, right? So I've got that legwork all set up. If you haven't done that, go ahead and do that right now. So maybe you had the same idea I did, right? Let's use Codex to simplify this route testing process. I asked Codex to provide examples on how to test each route and the body info in JSON that will be needed for the post and the put requests. So basically what it's did is it output an example of what I need to do to construct the routes here and give them a test. The first thing we're going to want to do is test the get route. That's going to be the base URL. Again, we can verify that in the server. For transactions, we have /API/transactions. And then when we go to the transaction routes, that's what will essentially be appended to the end of that base URL. So go ahead, copy that into there, hit enter, and we just hit send. And there's our list of transactions. We've got 2 of them at the moment, but that works just fine. We want to get one transaction. We're likely going to need the ID, so we'll just use ID1. And we'll paste in the base URL with a /1. And we should just get that single transaction back, and we do. So that works. Now we'll create a new transaction. So we'll come over here and we'll simply just copy the URL here. It should be no different. We're going to want to come to body at this point. The body is what gets sent to our API and is parsed in Express to pull out the properties, the JSON properties here. So we'll select raw. We're on JSON by default. So we can come over here. It's already giving us a example set of JSON that we can just copy and paste into there to create a new transaction. So we've got category ID, the type is expense, we've got our amount, description, and the transaction date. So we'll hit send, and it looks good. It looks like it's already created, and 4 is the ID. So let's test that real quick. We'll grab number 4. And there we have it. So the create transaction route works. Now let's update a route. Let's update a transaction, and we will simply update number 4. So we'll backspace there. We'll type in number 4, and we'll want to go to the body, select raw. We're in JSON. And here it's saying, okay, we'll just copy and paste this one in there. I mean, we're going to modify 4, so let's just go ahead and modify it. And okay, so it looks like it's modified. Now we'll go to get one again. You can see it says groceries. We've got, 42.75. If we hit it, we've got 55.25, which is in line with our update here. Now we want to delete one. So we'll go ahead and once again, put our URL in there. We'll delete number 4 for the sake of parity here. And it looks like the delete transaction has successfully ran. We'll query it and we should get nothing. Cool, transaction not found. That's a nice little bit of feedback there. So I hope you ended up pretty close to what we've got right now. If not, no worries. This isn't a technical channel. I do want to show you guys just how to use Postman and test your environment before you proceed to the next step, right? Codex obviously does a pretty good job at checking for its own bugs, its own errors, doing its own tests. But of course, we want human intervention. We want to test these things ourselves, and that's how you do it. In the next video, we'll get on to prompt number 3. We'll start building our dashboard UI and our dashboard API. So see you in the next one.